Hey guys, Daniel James here, and today we're going to be taking a look at CineWinds Core by Cinesamples. Not Cinesamples, the way I used to pronounce it. It's actually pronounced Cinesamples. Anyway, so what we're going to do today is, I've written a short little track in the background. We're going to take a listen to that, and then I'm going to dissect the track, showing which parts of the library I used and why to create the sound I got, and then all that good stuff. So here's the track. Let's take a listen and get started. Here we go. So there we go. There's the short little track I wrote. As you probably heard, it's like most of my recent videos. I'm trying to do things other than the big epic things, which I always do. You know, growing as a composer and as a man. Maybe not so much the second. So yeah, let's take a look at what CineWinds Core actually is. So CineWinds is a woodwind library, as you can hear. And it's been recorded, I believe, again at the Sony scoring stage. And let's just take a look. It's not one of the, it's not a contact powered library, so it won't load up in this left bar here. But you know, if you use the quick load menu, you know, you can just load it up down here. It's not no big deal. So it comes with 1, 2, 3, 4. It comes with 5 different instruments with 2 different patches each. So with each one, you get an articulations patch and you get a true legato patch. Now for this demo, I wanted to actually show how the legato sounds, because a lot of the demos that have been out so far have been like of the very kind of whimsical short note variety. So I thought I would show how it sounds legato and how it sounds in context with some strings and some brass. But I will talk about the articulations. I'll talk about those towards the end. And so, yeah, so you get a piccolo, you get a flute, you get an oboe, a clarinet, and a bassoon. And yeah, so if I take a look at the track, and we'll go through what I used for each. So this first line, I've got, well, the first section of this track begins with basically a duet between a flute and a clarinet, I believe. Again, my woodwind writing is a bit basic, so I should probably check that. Yeah, so between the flute true legato and the clarinet true legato. On both I'm using the Dennis Sands preset, but I'll go into what these are a little bit later. So let's take a listen to the line by itself. Now, as you can hear, they've got a very nice kind of, like a roomy kind of tone to them. I should mention now early on that I am actually using external reverb on this. For this track, it made sense to make them very kind of airy and, you know, very kind of ambient. So if I turn that off, I mean, it'll sound dry as anything right now, because I just took the reverb off. This is what they sound like out of the box. Which is a really good, it's a very good dry tone, particularly when you've got things like woodwinds. And sometimes with strings, you want them a little bit, like you want the option to have them dry so that you can, when you put reverb on, you can change the kind of tone that they are. But each of these patches here come with basically some microphone mix presets. So if I just solo out the flute, and I probably should have remembered that it does that. But so when you change, basically it changes the mix of the microphones. As you can see here, on the front panel of each instrument, you get a microphone mix. So it's recorded with 4 microphones, and then there's a full mix one. So there's a spot mic, a close mic, a room mic, and a surround mic, and then a full mix, which is basically what they consider like a mix of the best mix of all 4. But what they've done differently with this one, which I actually quite like, is that they've given you the option to change some certain presets. So the Dennis Sands preset is like it's the producer, the one who was there recording, who that was basically his preset. And then you've got like the dry and close, which sounds, as you can imagine, far and wet. I'm joking, dry and close. So that's right up next to the player. A roomy one. So this is just the room mic. As you see, you need to just let it load itself into RAM first. Or I could just force the issue and start playing. It's a pretty nice one. Ambient. So this is the ambient. This is basically just the surround microphone. Now this kind of has the, I mean, I'm wearing headphones so I can hear it a lot better than if you're listening through speakers. This does have that kind of, that like it says, it's ambient. So it's got like a bit of a tail. But the kind of line I was writing, I wanted it to feel almost otherworldly. That's why I put such a long, I mean, if you listen to the reverb tail I've got on my reverb down here, it's almost ridiculously, you know, unrealistically long. But I mean, that was my choice. Probably not the best thing to do on a demo, but you know, I like it. So then there's best legato, which is just the close mic. I'm just going to force the issue. Now a lot of these I mean, I'll get into this when we get over to the articulation patches towards the end of the video, but some of these articulations actually sound a lot better on the shorter note. It's not articulation. Some of these microphone presets sound a little bit better on the short articulations because, you know, they make them sharper and snappier. On the legato, it's more about the tail. So I'll just whack this back up to the Dennis Sands thing. So let me take a look at this flute line I've written here and show you what modulations I did to it. So, oh, there goes my phone. Jesus Christ, I forgot that was there. Jesus. Okay, which one of you tried to call me? Anyway, so where was I? Flute. Yeah, modulations on the flute. Let's take a listen. So. Now that line sounds like almost, it sounds realistic in the fact that it's got its own kind of like swells and, you know, dynamics to the line. And I'll show you how I achieved this. So on each patch they've got a modulation control which controls the velocity, I believe. Yeah, just had to check that. So, you know, if I move my mod wheel, if I hold a note and move the mod wheel up, and then back down. And one of the things with Cinesamples that I've noticed is that most of the patches come in quite loud. So they actually kind of come in like... And then with the mod wheel full down, velocity down, it's still relatively loud. But lucky for us, they've put the volume on CC7? What is it? I can check this. I may have got that wrong. Maybe CC11 expression, which I've got on my second fader. I don't have that. They're not numbered on my fader down here, on my hardware fader. I don't know. So CC11 is volume. So if I wanted a very soft line, I could move the CC11, the expression, right down. and then the mod wheel basically works within that ratio. So now the mod wheel, the highest the mod wheel goes is here. If I move the expression up, this is a good practice for most sample libraries. Whenever you're writing, if you decide I don't, if a patch is too loud or whatever, if you think I don't want my line to go any louder than a certain point, what you do is you put your modulation all the way up. So you put your velocity all the way up, and then you get your expression, you pull it up, and you decide that's as loud as I want it to go. So now so yeah, as you can see, sorry, I went off on a tangent there. So as you can see here, I've ridden my I rode my mod wheel here just to kind of go with the curves of the lines, put in some like crescendos, and then if you watch this crescendo here, so it's like da 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 da. My singing isn't perfect there, but you get the idea. And I believe with the expression, I just turned it so basically down to there. But one of the other cool features, which I absolutely love, is on the breath controller. Now you can see this looks like loads of spikes, but if I show you what the breath controller actually does, so if I hold a note and then move the breath controller up, see if you can tell the difference. It's the vibrato control. So this is kind of powerful if you're writing melodic lines, because like you wouldn't necessarily say you've got a line that goes well, I'll do it higher. If you had the vibrato up, you get a kind of that's the best way I can describe it, because there's a bit of vibrato going on. So you bring it down, and it's just a flat, non-vibrato tone. So it's easier to, I personally think, I mean, who am I to judge? But from what I've gauged, it sounds a lot more, like the transitions sound a lot cleaner when there's no vibrato. And it helps to add a bit of, like a singer would. How they would hold a note straight for a little bit, and then they would break into vibrato just to add that dynamic to the end of a line. So if I do it without, and then I do it with, just adds that nice little sweep. I don't know how to describe it. A nice little la da 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 da. I can't vibrato with my voice, so yeah. So if you listen here, this is where the vibrato is going to come in. That was actually too sharp. Lazy programming there, Daniel. Lazy programming. Again, one of the bonuses of drowning things in reverb is you can hide that. And I think this is a brilliant sound. This is a brilliant feature to have. I think nowadays you get it in string libraries and such, but on Winds it's almost imperative that it has that vibrato control, because vibrato, woodwinds is like what I would consider one of the closest to the human voice. I don't know if it's because you're blowing the instrument. That sounded rude. I don't know if it's because you're actually putting wind into the instrument. So it's almost like it's a part of the body. I mean, a brass is as well, but not quite in the same way. It's hard to describe, but yeah, like the way the vibrato comes through and stuff is very, very human. I think. All of those who actually use woodwinds a lot are listening to this now and face palming through their head right now. So, moving on to the next instrument, which is the clarinet, which I actually really like the tone of. That's as low as it goes. How high does it go? I'm guessing you wouldn't want to put a clarinet player through this though. So around this kind of area. So let me turn that reverb back off for a second. And again, this has the vibrato control. It's a little bit more relaxed on the clarinet. There it is. And then without, there's a bit of a change there. So this would be a good time to move into the settings panel, I believe. So as you can see on the settings panel, just before I show you the settings panel, everything else that I just showed on the flute, so the expression, the mod wheel, all that's exactly the same for every instrument. So you can just assume that they all have the same. Now, if we look at this legato section up here, you can see an on-off switch, and this isn't the on-off for the speed. This is the on-off for the actual legato. If I turn this off, there's no legato anymore. You know, so you can play big old chords, but obviously we want it on. So for those of you who don't know, I'm pretty sure most of you do, but for those of you who don't know, monophonic legato basically means you can only play one note at a time. So if I try and push two notes at the same time, it'll pick whichever one I push last. So you can only play one note at a time. And now polyphonic legato, I believe, is actually relatively new. So like if you wanted to play a patch like this polyphonically, which means more than one note at once, you would have to turn off the legato so that you could, you know, so you could play like a pad. But the scripting wizards that we have these days, they have polyphonic legato, which means there's legato transitions, but you could do it with two notes. I mean, yeah. So it's so if you've ever got those lines where you actually want to, you know, a bit of polyphonic legato, you know, because one of the things you have to remember about the CineWinds library is all of these instruments are solo players. So if you actually wanted a and a lot of the times wind sections are in twos or threes, so this is actually useful in a way, so that if you're actually doing sorry, I keep going off on tangents. So yeah, because they're recorded solo and most sections are in, you know, pairs or triplets, pairs or, you know, in groups of three, a lot of the time if you've got like an ensemble patch, so you've got a patch that's already recorded with two players, if you wanted a line that wasn't a unison, so if you wanted a line that was actually like a chord, so let's say you've got three clarinet players and you wanted a triad. If you have, let's say you wanted a triad and you have an ensemble of three players, you're going to end up with 9 players in your virtual orchestra because each note will have 3 players playing on it. Whereas if you've got a solo instrument, it's only one, so you've technically got the correct amount of players in your imaginary woodwind section. This appeals to some people, it doesn't to others. But oh God, what have I done? Let go. There we go. So the dynamics, I believe, is yeah. So like I was mentioning earlier with the expression, where you can move the expression to you know, like the maximum velocity, maximum volume you want your actual patch to go. They have this dynamics fader, so if that's my mod wheel all the way up and down unrealistically. If I turn this down, You can hear that it's, as you can imagine by the way it looks, it's basically closing the amount of dynamic range there is. So if you only wanted your lines to be soft, but you still wanted a bit of mod wheel control, so you knew that your entire line was going to be really kind of soft, you know. Excuse the clicks and pops. That always happens when I'm recording. Yeah, so if you knew you were going to have a soft line, you know, you could cross the dynamic range like that, so that you still have a little bit of dynamics on the mod wheel, but you know, you're not going off into the loud thing, so you don't have to be quite so finicky and particular with where you put your mod wheel. So over here we have some effects, and they all kind of do what they do, and these are more you wouldn't really use these so much in an actual conventional setting. You would use them if you're doing a little bit sound designy. So you wanted winds in space or something, you know. Not actually hearing much delay there. I wonder if I made it go wrong. There it is. Just wasn't loud enough. Bit of high pass. So we've just got the bit of chorus. Maybe a bit more. Whack up the stereo width, why not? Whack up the drive. Now I imagine when they designed the clarinet they didn't expect it to be run through distortion pedals, so it may sound a little bit off, but it's always nice to have, you know, if it's there it's good. And then we have over here the mapping control. So as you can see, the sustain dynamics is CC1, which is mod wheel, and then vibrato control is on CC2, which is otherwise known as the breath controller, I believe. I should again probably check my facts, because I say this as though I know. Yeah, CC2, breath control, CC4, foot pedal, CC11, expression, then lots of empty ones. But so if you have a hardware setup, you know, if you have a hardware MIDI controller like I do, which has faders and dials and things, and it's set up so maybe your CC1 is next to CC, I don't know, 24 or something, you could change that here, and it goes up to 30. So there's plenty of you know, if you didn't want the sustained dynamic, you know, if you didn't want the velocity on CC1, which is mod wheel, you know, you can come in and change it, which is all good fun. So that is the clarinet. Again, same. It's got all the mic position presets, and of course you've got over here. You've got EQ and reverb. So if I turn this on, I believe. I'm not hearing too much difference with the reverb there, but if we take a listen to the EQ, so the high, you wanted to add a little bit of air, you know. And again, if you command click on things, it sets them back to 0, and then whack them off. Whack them off. What is with the rude innuendo? Turn them off. Okay, so next up we have the bassoon. Actually, no, let's do this. So if we come to this line here, and as you hear down here, we have the Piccolo. The Piccolo flute. Let me load this up. And the Piccolo is a very kind of small flute. That's the way I see it. With a very, very high range. Almost like a... Oh, you can hear him forcing the air through this one. You can imagine Mike in the control room. Blow it harder! Like that. Sorry. Now piccolos I actually really like. They have a kind of a magical sound to them. Again, lots of clicks and pops today. My computer seems to be having... That isn't the library, that's my computer. I'm looking at the wrong patch, for Christ's sake. And one of the things I actually like a lot about the piccolos is actually when you throw them in reverb, they become... I described them as magical a moment ago, but that's when they really start to shine. There's something about the tail you get on a piccolo. So I'm going to whack on the Dennis Sands one again. I'm going to turn my reverb back on. It's just, I mean, let me just give a demonstration. I think I've got some, yeah, I've got some strings up here. So if I just like lay down just hold the sustain pedal, and then, so that's still on. As you can see, very kind of magical. Almost, it reminds me of, this will sound weird, but it reminds me of snow. Yeah, so in the line I've done here, so we've got like the flutes and the clarinet doing this line. It's basically just doubling the clarinet line, which has got this descending kind of do do do. So next we move on to the repetition of the theme, and what I do here is I move it over to the oboe? Yeah, the oboe. Where is it? Here it is. And I thought now would be a good time to mention the speed control for the legato. So what is speed control? I hear you cry out in numbers. So if speed control is essentially how fast, I mean, this is the way I understand it, is the speed control is basically how fast the note goes from goes through its legato transition. So when I push, you know, this note, there's a certain amount of time the legato transition is there for. So you can hear that this changeover is much quicker. So the speed, so if you turn it up, let me turn my reverb off. It gives you the opportunity to play faster lines. You have it slower, you hear it becomes a lot more slowed, which is good for the or if you're unsure of how fast your line's going to be, you know, it's always good to have it mid, a little bit fast, you know. In my case, it's actually quite slow, so I'm going to just lean it a little bit to the... And then with a bit of... Down here we've got round robin, which, so round robin, if you don't know, is essentially, I'm not sure how much this applies to the legato. I'm not sure if the legato's actually got transition, so I should probably leave that to I'll leave that to the short ones. So let's take a listen to the line I wrote here. I didn't talk much about this intro section. It's basically just, you know, because I forgot to, you know, you got a line, you've got, well, basically I've got a theme. As you can see, it's doubled again with a different harmonization. So then, you see, I'm no good at winds. I don't know how to explain it, but so yeah, I wrote a theme and then I harmonized it. Then I doubled that melody, harmonized it a different way, changed chords, boom, 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 Bob's your uncle. We're on to the second section where I have not so much variated the theme, but I've reorchestrated. I've changed the instruments it's on. So now it's on an oboe. So let's take a listen. And also I've layered it up with some strings up here. So I wanted to show how well this library can layer with strings and brass and stuff. So what I've done here is I've unison. So I've played the same notes on the oboe and the strings to bring it, bring in a different kind of character. If I take the strings away, actually if I take the oboe away, you can hear it. It kind of thickens up the line. Orchestration 101. So we're basically thickening this line, and then we get the introduction of the bassoon, which is this very low. It's normally quite. It's like a comical sound. But one thing about the bassoon that I like is when it goes up into its higher registers, it's actually kind of it's almost like a soft, it's like a huggable beast. It has a beautiful vibrato. It's a beautiful, beautiful tone. So what I've done in the actual track here is I've basically, again, I've doubled the, not the line so much, but basically I did a repetition of this section here. Da dum, da dum. It's almost like a call and response thing. And then the bassoon leads a kind of counter melody here, which sounds like this, which is also doubled on the oboe. With a little bit of a suspended fourth kind of vibe, or second, I can't remember. But if you put that in the track, so listen to how the bassoon leads this counter melody. Just to show that off, I'll layer it with just the strings. Again, going a little bit high for the bassoon there, but that's why I doubled it on the oboe. So if I play the, so this is the strings, the oboe and the bassoon, coming in from the bassoon line. Beautiful, just beautiful. Down here we have the little piccolo's doing its little thing again. It's doing its piccolo. Piccolo's gonna pick. And just a descending line. Oh, and for those of you who the eagle-eyed, I always say eagle-eyed, I don't know if eagles have got good eyes, someone will have to fill me in. So I have been using the articulations patch for the piccolo, and I wanted to do this on purpose just to show that the legato for the actual articulation patches is as good as the true legato. Like, it sounds to me just as good. I'm pretty sure it's the same script that does the legato. So now we've talked about all the different sections of what they've kind of been playing. I'll take you through the articulation patches. So an articulation patch is essentially, not percussion, articulation patch is essentially like your short notes patch. For those of you who saw my Cinebrass videos, you would have seen that I'm a big fan of the actual short notes thing, because you can get quite rhythmic with it. Again, the intent of this track was to show the legato, so I'll just walk you through them here. But so basically, the way an articulation patch works is, so you have your velocity on the mod wheel, and the articulation is controlled on the by the velocity of the actual key. So if I push a key soft, as you can see here, so if I'm pushing between 1 and 79, we can actually tell this, I think, by, if I come in here, I forget how we can tell how hard I'm pushing. Let's just go back into the thing. So soft notes up to 79, and then if I'm pushing between 80 and 114, so basically 1 is this, and 127 is this. that hurt my finger, that I hit it so hard. So if you want like, you know, da da da, you go soft, soft, hard. And if you want it a short half note, you slam that thing down. HS trill, I'm not sure what this does. I probably should have, so a half step trill. Let's see what this does. Interesting, I didn't know this was here. God damn it. Okay, so let me put it on velocity. So apparently, I wasn't even aware this was in here, but you can put some trills in here, which is awesome. So I imagine I could do it so that if I move this up to, say, 25, Yeah, so if I'm hitting under 25, so between 25 and 29 is still short notes, the 8th note shorts. A bit harder. And then really hard is that. But if I wanted a whole step, you know, which is like from D to E, if I put this on velocity and then I move it down to 24, that means if I push this key really soft, instead of doing a short staccato or spiccato, no, it'd be staccato, a short note. It's neither. It's a short note. If I do if I push the key softer, now it'll do. So this is over 25. If I push it really soft, that's really cool. I wasn't aware that was actually there. So you learned as I learned, and we all learned together. So I imagine, I mean, I'm not sure for certain because I only just found this, but HS I assume means half step, which is from D to D sharp, and then WS I assume is whole step, which is from D to E. If you want to sustain, so this is kind of, oh, this could be interesting. So let's say I didn't want any sustains on this patch, and I could put that down to 1. So, you know, but I did want to have yeah, cool. So if I wanted, like, I didn't want sustain, but I wanted, say, half step trills, I can have it so that when I push the pedal down, so when the pedal's down, I wasn't quick enough on the pedal. So you could get really kind of, it depends on what line you're writing, but the fact that you can change these around is actually kind of cool. And so I can have it so that when the pedal, so it's a sustain, and again I could put it on monophonic legato. So if you prefer it so that it's a sustain, so if you'd rather not load the true legato patches and you'd rather load up the articulation patches, what you can do is come into the mapping and change it so that sustain pedal when the pedal's up. So basically when you're not pushing it down, for those of you who didn't know what up meant, if you're not pushing the pedal down, it's going to be a true legato patch. And then if you wanted to bring in the short notes, you just push down the pedal. You know, so you can do it. It all depends on your playing style. So up here again, we've got the sustain dynamics on CC1, short dynamics again CC1, and the vibrato control CC2. Short sustain split. I'm not sure what this does, and I can't click it, so I don't know what it does. But the short sustain order, I assume, is if I switch this over. Who knows? I'm not fully sure what that does. But so yeah, one of the things I mentioned earlier is I wanted to show you. Oh yeah, sorry. So these things here are basically presets for how you want the short notes to go. It's a lot to remember all this to explain it. You have to forgive me. So these are basically different types of. Well, basically how you want the articulations to be laid out. So the way it comes in is, you know, like I first explained. So you push the key soft, you get short note. Push it hard, you get a longer note. Push the pedal down, you get sustain. if you wanted it a different way, you know, if you wanted it the opposite way, so the longer ones, so you have to push hard for the short, and then you do it like that. Key switch map basically says that if I push F0, then it'll sustain. If I push C0, it'll short note. Key switch velocity, so the dynamics are no longer on the mod wheel. You can really customize it. I mean, it all depends on what you like, because some people like to play, some people just love to play some people love to play with the dynamics on the velocity. So if I put like the short eighth notes on the pedal, so some people love to play like short notes with velocity on the key, so they can go. You know, so they like to, when they push the key hard, it's a louder note. When they push the key soft, you know, you can change all this around, and you can really just, you know, you can go crazy with it. You can go crazy with it. Yeah, one of the things I wanted to show you, so let me put that back to when the pedal's up, it's a short note. So one of the things I wanted to show you was that the short notes sound better, sound more different with these mic presets. So this is what it sounds like with the Dennis Sands preset. And then you've got Cartoon, which is all spot mic. Really up close in your face. Bright John Williams. Not John Williams, Bright JW. I'm not sure what the JW stands for. Best legato. Not so much for short notes. Ambient. Roomy. And we'll just stick it back to the Dennis Sands. So if I just set my thing back. So let me, do I have a spare MIDI track? Number 6. Flute articulation. So yeah, what I'll do now is I'll just basically just show you what each of the articulation patches sound like, so that you know, so you get a taste of it all. So the flutes, you know, why am I all the way up here? And again, these are all similar. So the round robin, for those of you who don't know, is basically when I push a key more than once, if you only had one sample, it would have something called the machine gun effect, which is where if you hear the same, you hear it a lot like in like electronic music, when you've got a hi-hat that's exactly the same, you get a kind of kind of sound. And obviously real instruments don't do this, because every time you blow the instrument, every time you blow the instrument, it's, you know, you blow it with a different kind of, you know, a different angle, a different amount of air. So it'll never sound exactly the same. So the round robin, so random round robin means that there's, let's say, I'm not sure how many round robin it is, but let's say there's 5 round robins per note. That means that what it's doing is it's randomly picking between those 5 notes to play back, so that it, you know, so if I play a line that goes, when I was hitting that higher note here, you're not sure, you know, you can't hear. If you do cycle round robin, that means that you'll never get one, like within, let's say there's 5 and it goes 1 3 1 2 4 5. You hear that 1 really close, so you might not like that. So if you want cycle, basically what it'll do, so if you've got 5 round robins and you number them 1 to 5, if you've got cycle round robin, when you push the key, it'll go 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5. That's good if you're not intending to play more than 5 times, but if you've got a line that's got the note played 6 times, you'll hear the repeat, you'll hear the cycle. So it all depends on what your line's like. Round robin reset, I assume, just means that every time you push the key, it resets. I'm not sure. The sample restart, sample start will be. Again, I'm not fully sure what that one does. Perhaps in the comments one of the mics can correct me as to what that does. But and then you have the delay and the release delay. So if I turn this off. So a release sample is basically when you let go of the key, there's another sample that plays that's basically the end of it. So they can't record every single possible ending to every note. So, you know, if I play a note that's 1 second and I play one that's 3, they'll both have like, because they when they record it, they can't record every single amount of time ending. What they do is they record like the amount of time and then they make a release sample, so basically it makes it sound as though the player stopped playing at that point. Because with it off, you hear when I let go of the key, it goes dead, and that's because there's no release. Like if it was in a real hall, when the player stopped playing, the sound would still be traveling through the room. But because they can't record every single eventuality of that, because it would be billions upon trillions of variations, you record a release trigger, which simulates what it would sound like if the player had stopped playing within the room. And then the delay, how long after the note is let go, it sounds. So that is pretty much everything. So let me just play some of these articulations. Let's move on to the oboe. I have no idea why I said it like that. And again, these are, unless you otherwise specify, the short notes are always polyphonic, so you can play more than one note at once. And they sound pretty good in the reverb as well. Although, again, otherworldly. Signs. Some oboe again, hold down the pedal. Clarinet articulations. Bit of cartoon. I'm not playing that poorly, it's because it's loading, I promise. lots and lots of players going on there. And the bassoon sounds great with Articulation. I probably should have started with that one. Boom. Too many bassoons there, I think. And cartoony. And bring it out. But yeah, load up the clarinet one more time, because I do love me some clarinet. So yeah, that's the articulation patches. And sorry, sorry that I was so quiet in that time there. I wanted to just let you guys hear what it actually kind of sounds like, because I talk a lot. I'm aware of this. So yeah, like I say, the track I wrote, I wanted to show off the legato sections of it, you know, particularly like things like this, where at the end you get these big sections, you know. That was so epic it made me sneeze. You know, the legato I think sounds brilliant, particularly when you've got it, you know, soloed out, you know. You know, it's easy because it's got like that kind of ambient tone already in the samples. You throw it in a reverb, it sounds brilliant. You know, so I wanted to show off that it could do that, because these videos have never been so much reviews as how I use, how I would personally use them in context as a composer, because my day job is actually writing music. So I like to show how I would use them, and legato is where I would start with woodwinds, because normally when I'm using woodwinds, particularly the music I write, it's more about the tone of woodwinds as opposed to the actual woodwinds, and the sounds of these, you know, really add that kind of that whimsical, magical feel that I think woodwinds gives you. So, so yeah, that's pretty much what you get with the core library. I believe there is a pro library coming around the corner, which I think is I'm not sure if it has the same instruments included, but I know from what I've seen, I believe it's got like some ethnic winds and, you know, some extra different types of winds. But if you are writing for like conventional orchestration, you know, with this is pretty much your wind section. So I mean, if you're just writing the conventional stuff, this would probably cover all the bases. And one of the things that I read, and I just want to like cover this, you know, with my opinion before we end, is a lot of people were saying that because it's solos, it's like this library is only good for layering, you know, like with other wind instruments. Like I mentioned, because you've got the polyphonic legato, if you've got more than one line, if your lines are all unison, okay, I can see it being a problem. But you've got to remember that Cinesamples have also got the Hollywood Winds, which is an ensemble library, so you could technically layer it with that and it would still work. So what I would like to see perhaps in the future is with the winds is perhaps like ensemble patches to include with the solo one. So almost like LA scoring strings, where you have the Divisi section. So you have a first chair and then you have, you know, an ensemble patch. So if you want a unison line, you can do that. And then if you want to break off into solos, you could do that. So the way I see it is CineWinds Core as it stands right now is perfectly adequate of covering the winds, because it's got that polyphonic legato and, you know, the sound of it's spot on. But of course it would always be good to see ensembles sometime in the future, but to be honest, I'm perfectly happy right now with the solo instruments. So yeah, so that's Cinesamples CineWinds. You can get it from, I think, cinesamples.com, cinesamples.com. Same with all the other ones. And yeah, I hope this has given you a chance to see what the library actually sounds like in context. And I hope that, you know, you've found it useful. If not, at least a little bit entertaining. If not, I've wasted your time again, and I'm surprised you've watched this many videos to the end, and with me wasting your time all the time. So cheers for watching though, guys, and leave comments about what you want to, you know, I'll try and answer questions in the comments if I've missed something out you wanted to know. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you all again in the next video. Thank you. Good night.